Let the torch of freedom burn.
Welcome to the intersection of faith and the culture. It's WallBuilders Live, where we talk about today's hottest topics on policy and faith and the culture. A lot of great programs coming up this week. You're going to enjoy all of them. Be sure and visit our website, wallbuilderslive.com, where you can make a donation. We're a listener-supported program, so thanks to all of you that are doing that on a monthly basis. You make this possible, and we are speaking truth. We're speaking truth to a culture that desperately needs it, and when you donate to this program, you help amplify that voice. So thanks for being a part of the solution. Also at wallbuilderslive.com, you can get archives of our program over the last few weeks. Maybe if you missed just one or two, you can grab them there at wallbuilderslive.com. And that's also where you can share with your friends and family. So grab the links and send them out. You can be a force multiplier in that way as well, just by sharing that truth that you hear on the program. WallBuilders comes out of that scripture in Nehemiah, arise and rebuild the walls that we may no longer be a reproach. We all know that America is, in many ways, a reproach right now. We can turn it around. God's given us the tools that we need, but we've got to engage in the process. So thank you for being a listener and a part of the solution. My name is Rick Green. I'm a former Texas legislator and America's Constitution coach. It is my honor to work with David Barton. He's America's premier historian and our founder here at WallBuilders. Also with Tim Barton, national speaker and pastor and president of WallBuilders. And we just want to all three thank you for tuning in today. Really excited about the programs we've got for you this week. All right, David, Tim, later in the program, our friend Randy Forbes, former congressman from Virginia, will be with us. Normally we're talking domestic issues on WallBuilders Live. That just seems to dominate most of our conversations. But international issues, very important, especially our relationship with Israel, something we do spend a lot of time on the program here. But also now China has become a major issue for us here in the U.S., and the policy of the president is what really dictates the relationship with another nation. And probably not much difference between Trump and Biden on China, right, guys? I mean, very little.
Just like there's no difference between Trump and Biden on Israel. What a reversal we've got with the Israel policy.
Yeah.
And the same kind of thing with China. But the problem with China is, if you asked most people on the streets, who are the American enemies? They say, well, we really don't have any. Everybody kind of leaves America alone.
Trump supporters.
Yeah, the insurrection guys. So most people would not identify enemies. And you say, what about Russia? Well, yeah, maybe 30 years ago in the Soviet Union, but not now. And so people don't see China as a real threat.
No, and they do see, Biden administration just announced they're going to have some sanctions on Russia. And so there might be some people who are maybe a little more politically attuned who might recognize some of this, but they don't see where the Trump administration saw Iran. There are some challenges with Iran. You don't see the same level of concern from maybe some of the political individuals in the Biden administration. But, even as we talk about China, certainly China is not a nation that culturally Americans think is a problem. And one of the great examples is because the NBA supports China. They support a lot of the behavior happening with China when the NBA was, and I'm talking just the last year or two, when the NBA was very anti-Trump, they were very in favor of BLM. And you can go down the list of where they've been politically involved. But then when China comes in and they take over Hong Kong, right? They start arresting people, or you find out about these Uyghur Muslims who are 3 million of them living in concentration camps. And the NBA is like, nope, it's no big deal. China's not a problem. We're good friends with China. Disney, right? Disney Plus is now one of these streaming apps that a lot of people have Disney Plus. And actually, a lot of people are leaving Disney Plus because of the Gina Carano incident from The Mandalorian, among other things. But
and Joe Biden even said the other day he wouldn't even bring it up with the prime minister. Not even going to say anything about it.
Right. And this is where, right, when Disney Plus just a year ago came out with the movie Mulan, which some listeners might remember, there was an old cartoon Mulan and there was a Disney movie. And so they made this live action film, and they filmed much of it in China, and they filmed it in the nation of China, where these literal concentration camps are still in place. And Disney Plus at the end said, we're so grateful to China for them partnering with us in this work. Well, Disney's also the same company that when Georgia came out being pro-life, Hollywood, Disney said, we're not sure that we can still work in Georgia because they're pro-life. You are seeing not only the hypocrisy from some of these groups like the NBA or like Disney, but what you're seeing is they are painting China in a very positive light. So most Americans would think, well, if you're concerned with China, it's because you're weird, you're an extremist, you're a problem. At least that is the perception that is being painted. So, Dad, to your point, when you ask people, who do you think are some of maybe the big challenge nations or enemy nations that we're dealing with, China's not going to be a nation that you're going to hear very often from most commonplace, normal Americans. Now, again, if you're politically attuned and you're paying attention, you're listening, you might think, no, China, certainly, we know some of the bad things they're doing. But generally speaking, most Americans don't know the really bad positions China has taken. And I just named a couple of the obvious ones with Hong Kong and with the literal concentration camps. Those are two very obvious ones. But there's way more even that are challenges with China that people don't know. And China certainly is one of those nations that they are definitely anti-American, anti-Christian, anti-religion, etc. They're a major problem for America.
Yeah, one of the things with China that people don't recognize is China has evil intentions toward America. They want America destroyed and subdued. China wants to be the number one power in the world with nobody even a distant second behind them. And so they work aggressively with spying, with undermining military connections, with undermining business connections, trying to destroy the economy of a nation. What China does to us on a regular, almost daily basis with cyber attacks, and cyber attacks against the military as well, not only business institutions, but the military. China has dead serious intentions to wipe out America, and this is stuff that's not being talked about.
And let's point out also, this is not some random computer hacker in China who is committing these cyber attacks. These are literal people who work for the government of China who are paid and employed to cause interference in America. This is their actual job by the Chinese government. China has made it very clear that they don't like America. They have problems with America. And certainly when America is one of the greatest producers and has so much wealth and so much power, and China wants to have that position that you have to, right, in this essence, you have to dethrone the king before you can take the throne. This is what you are seeing, China targeting America, trying to dethrone America from some of those positions.
And what you saw in the Trump administration, last I knew, toward the end of the Trump administration, they had identified and deported nearly 1,000 Chinese spies working in America. So they were doing all sorts of...
There's not Chinese spies in America. Eric Swalwell told us there weren't.
That's right. And there wasn't a Chinese spy sleeping with him in his bed either.
No, he wouldn't do that kind of stuff.
No.
And it's good that actually after he was discovered having an affair with a Chinese spy, that he's still on the Intelligence Committee. So that's the good news, is that he still has a very powerful position in Congress on his...
How are you defining good news? I think I missed that.
Yeah, no, okay, that's a mistake. That's actually utterly ridiculous. And there were calls when it was found out that this Democrat congressman was having an affair. And I'm saying affair. I don't think he was married and she wasn't married, but he was living with a Chinese spy. They were hooking up, shacking up, right? They're living together. And it's evident. She's a Chinese spy. He's on the Intelligence Committee. She was using his cell phone. I mean, things that were compromising our literal national intelligence. The nation's security were compromised. And he's not penalized. He doesn't lose his committee. He doesn't lose his privilege because Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have determined, nope, he needs to stay there. But this is where China was actively involved in targeting people on the Intelligence Committee to get information from America to use for their benefit against America. This is actively happening right now.
So there were about 1,000 spies that Trump deported, and a lot of them came out of what's called the Confucius Institute, and there's about 90 of those across the nation. They tend to sit up at research universities and outside of research universities, and they have the propaganda. They get with the professors and how great China is, and they get their kids to work in the computer labs and in the scientific research, et cetera. And so, and I say kids, they're not kids, they're adults, 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old working in these things. And they were funneling all this scientific research information, all this technological information, funneling back to China. And so particularly through what were called the Confucius Institutes, there were about 1,000 of these folks that were deported totally across the nation, including a number of I guess you could say little older students, college students that were in school, not necessarily to get a degree, but to get information shipped back to China. So I say this to say there is actually a serious threat against America. It's not like they want to live and let live. They want to crush and destroy, do everything they can to tear up our economy, our military, our technology, the cyber attacks, everything else. They want to be number one in the world, and America, they want them in such a far number two position that we will never again threaten them. Now, one guy who probably knows more about this than anybody in the country is Congressman Randy Forbes. When he was in Congress, he's on the Armed Services Committee. He was in charge of so much of what happened with the naval powers and naval stuff in America. After he left Congress, he's actually part of the Naval War College. up in the New England area, and they use him as the expert on China. This is how China thinks. This is what they're going to try to do. If we're going to defend ourselves from China and the Chinese, this is how we have to be prepared. And so Randy is probably the top national expert on this when it comes to what's happening with China. And seeing what Biden and the Biden administration is doing with cozying up to China and treating China the way Republicans treated Israel, seeing that close connection is really kind of scary. So we thought we'd ask Randy and get a better perspective on what's happening and what we need to be doing.
Quick break. We'll be right back with Randy Forbes here on WallBuilders Live.
Hey guys, we want to let you know about a new resource we have here at WallBuilders called The American Story. For years, people have been asking us to do a history book, and we've finally done it. We start with Christopher Columbus and go roughly through Abraham Lincoln. And one of the things that so often we hear today are about the imperfections of America, or how so many people in America that used to be celebrated or honored really aren't good or honorable people. One of the things we acknowledge quickly in the book is that the entire world is full of people who are sinful and need a Savior, because the Bible even tells us that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And yet what we see through history, and certainly is evident in America, is how a perfect God uses imperfect people and does great things through them. The story of America is not the story of perfect people, but you see time and time again how God got involved in the process and used these imperfect people to do great things that impacted the entire world from America. To find out more, go to wallbuilders.com and check out The American Story. This is Tim Barton from WallBuilders with another moment from American history. Founding fathers John Adams and Thomas Jefferson originally worked closely together, but later became ardent opponents. This troubled Dr. Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration, who knew both of them very well. In the Bible, 2 Corinthians 5:18 tells us that God has given each of us the ministry of reconciliation. Dr. Rush believed this and set out to bring the two back together. It took a while, but Adams and Jefferson once again became close friends. And looking back on his role in helping bring about this reconciliation, Dr. Rush stated, "It will give me pleasure, as long as I live, to reflect that I have been in any degree instrumental in effecting this reunion of two souls destined to be dear to each other and motivated with the same dispositions to serve their country, though in different ways." For more information about Dr. Benjamin Rush and his other remarkable achievements, go to wallbuilders.com.
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us. Former Congressman Randy Forbes back with us. Always good to have you, Randy. Good to have you today, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Rick. It's always great to be with you. Thanks for the wonderful job you guys do.
Well, we cover a lot of topics with you. One of the topics we haven't talked about in quite a while is just the whole China situation and certainly the Biden administration's approach towards China. Very, very different from President Trump. Seems to be a victory for China in terms of a much softer policy and so many different areas. What do you see happening over the next few years in terms of our approach towards China?
Well, Rick, we're very concerned. As you remember, I started, founded, and chaired the China caucus in Congress. It was the first caucus that was really designed to kind of do oversight on China, and we have watched them for a decade and a half now is what they have been doing. And it's very concerning that the way they are spreading out throughout the world, both economically and militarily. And one of the things that we were very concerned about is what we saw under the Obama administration, Rick, because as you probably remember, under the Obama administration, they literally sent out a written memo that prohibited the military and other people in the administration from even calling China a competitor, much less doing anything about it. You couldn't even talk about it. They would chide people in the military who would even ask if we should view them as a competitor. The big thing that we see right now with the Biden administration is that they have already started reversing some of President Trump's policies. One of the policies that he had was to protect the electric and power grids that we have in vital facilities around the country, to make sure that they were not being supplied with parts and things from China that they might have control of, be able to access later on. The Biden administration has now rolled that back. And, of course, everybody's familiar with what they've done to this Keystone pipeline, which was going to have a lot of oil coming from Canada into the United States. First of all, it's going to tremendously impact our economy in terms of the people they off, the price of oil, and those kind of things. But in addition to that, this oil will now be freed up to be sold to China, which is exactly what China wants. But, Rick, one of the things that we are really frightened about is what we're going to see in national defense. Under the Obama administration, we just saw national defense gutted across the board. And when you look at what President Biden's administration is looking to do with national defense and where they're spending their money other places and taking it away from national defense, that's going to really be good news if you are sitting on a China board right now or someplace in China when you look at what that's going to bode for them down the road.
You said something that I did not remember, and that is just the same type of censorship that we're seeing in a big way right now. We saw hints of that, it sounds like, with the Obama administration, even with regards to China, certainly within the military. They were already playing that game of literally not letting people even debate an issue or speak about an issue in order to, get only one side. So we saw a hint of that.
You're right, Rick. We actually had articles that were published international that I wrote that just, pointed out the fact that it's one thing if you ultimately decide you're not going to do something, but to not even be able to have the discussion, to not even have our military people be able to raise the fact, shouldn't we be concerned about these things? That's just horrifying. And, of course, we've been watching now as the Chinese have been increasing their military on a geometrical basis to where they're going to outnumber our subs across the globe in just a few years. And there's going to be a huge deficit between the number of subs they have and the number of subs we have. On so many different fronts now, they are just increasing dramatically their military capabilities. And President Trump began to try to turn that around. It was heading in good directions, but now we're very, very concerned, and so are most military planners, that we're going to see that reversed.
Randy, when we're in a situation like this, I guess similar to the Obama administration, where you do have a presidential administration that is just making bad foreign policy decisions, how do we battle that? Does it have to come from the outside with think tanks and papers and talk radio like we're doing now to just educate people? Is there enough of a caucus in Congress to push back on that? Does it mean 2022 election is even that much more important in order to get one of the two chambers back so that you can fight back against these things?
Well, Rick, I think all of the above. People don't realize sometimes that when you lose control of the House and the Senate, you also lose control of the hearings. So you will not even have hearings brought up to point out some of these things that are going to be happening to national defense and some of the things that are going to be happening globally that are going to put the United States at risk. So taking one or both of those chambers back is crucial, not just for the votes that are cast and ultimate bills and funding of national defense, but just in the discussions and being able to have the debates and to uncover some of these things. But barring that, Rick, I think you make a great point. We're going to have to do these kinds of radio programs and talks around the country so that people can understand exactly what's going on. My big fear is we live in a world where so many people and even so much of the media is running off on things that I really don't think is that important when they're talking about, but they get people's focus off of the really big issues. And one of the most enormous issues you and I will face in our lifetime is whether we have a flip in power between China and the United States. In the South Pacific area, Rick, a lot of people think, well, that's way away from our country. What impact does it have? Well, here's the impact. Probably 2/3 of the trade in the world is going to go through that area. In addition, the largest armies in the world are going to camp there. The largest navies in the world are going to be there. If you have a World War III, it's likely to start in that region. Every bad thing and every good thing, it's like a highway that comes directly from there into the west coast of the United States. If we surrender that and we surrender that rule of the sea to China, it's a whole new world order because they do not believe in law the way that we do. In fact, they've stated it before. Their philosophy is we're big, we're strong, get used to it, and that's a terrible way for countries to, have a world order that is what you and I are used to having. So it's going to impact us not just militarily, but economically in a huge way as well.
Well, you read my mind on what my final question was going to be, is how to get people to realize this impacts them, because sometimes we only think about domestic policy and not foreign policy, and this one is huge in so many different ways. Randy, thanks for keeping an eye on this. Thanks for being willing to come and share with us on it. How can we keep up with you, man? I guess through the Congressional Prayer Caucus, best place for folks to follow you?
That's the best place to go. They can go to our website there, and we're launching a new report that we're going to be reporting on these things, on a weekly basis, where people can really tag in and be able to see what's really going on, both on a national defense basis and also a lot of other things that's going on in Congress. So they can check with us there as well.
Excellent. Randy, God bless you, brother. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Rick. Have a good day.
You too. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back with David and Tim Barton.
Have you noticed the vacuum of leadership in America? We're looking around for leaders of principle to step up, and too often, no one is there. God is raising up a generation of young leaders with a passion for impacting the world around them. They're crying out for the mentorship and leadership training they need. Patriot Academy was created to meet that need. Patriot Academy graduates now serve in state capitals around America, in the halls of Congress, in business, in the film industry, in the pulpit, and every area of the culture. They're leading effectively and impacting the world around them. Patriot Academy is now expanding across the nation, and now's your chance to experience this life-changing week that trains champions to change the world. Visit patriotacademy.com for dates and locations. Our core program is still for young leaders 16 to 25 years old, but we also now have a citizen track for adults. So visit the website today to learn more. Help us fill the void of leadership in America. Join us in training champions to change the world at patriotacademy.com.
We're back here on WallBuilders Live. Thanks for staying with us, and thanks to Randy Forbes for joining us today. Guys, as I was listening to Randy and even to what you guys were saying at the beginning of the program, I mean, this feels a little bit like when Ronald Reagan finally just came out and said the Soviet Union is an evil empire. And, of course, the State Department, everybody went nuts, and, you can't say that, and you can't call evil what it actually is. I mean, are we having that moment? Is Trump basically, he did that during his 4 years, and now are we going to have to be the ones, speaking up since our president is cozying up to these guys? We've got to sound the alarm, just like we're doing in this program. Look, this is not a nice nation trying to just have, free trade with us.
Look, when you look at China and recognize there are at least 1 million known slaves in China, we know there's more than that because they don't keep stats and don't release them, but we know of at least 1 million. And when we know that they have concentration camps and they're doing executions, and we see all the torture and persecution, the underground church, what's happened to it, we see that these are not nice guys, and they do want to take down our way of life. And it's interesting, in even watching a Biden interview and talking about China, he talks about how he's been with the premier of China more than any other person in America, probably any American leader. And he says that the premier of China does not have a Democrat small d bone in his body. There is nothing in him that thinks about the people, that thinks about the good of the nation, only thinks about himself and power. And so when Randy says, look, the Chinese are soon going to have more nuclear submarines than America does, we're reticent to use nuclear stuff. We don't, we just like with Japan, we dropped leaflets in Japan in World War II saying, hey, we're about to drop an atomic bomb. We don't want to do this. China's not going to do that. They're going to use it, and they're willing to use it because for them, force and power is everything. They don't have the same morality. That's why they have slaves, and that's why they do the murders and brutal executions, etc. And so to even hear things like that should be scary for every American, but we're so used to being Americans, we just assume good about everybody, and that's just not the right position.
Well, and we have such a dishonest media that cares more about promoting an agenda than about actually releasing news. This would be news that every American should know or want to know, because it should shape the way that we care about policy and the way that we care about national security. Again, national security is a big deal, that China is against the American national security, deliberately attacking it on a frequent basis, sending in literal spies, having computer hackers and cyber warfare and all the things going on. China is not a friendly ally, regardless of what Hunter Biden's relationship was with China or who they knew in China, right? Regardless of the Biden administration. And I understand when there is corrupt and dirty politics and there's family and there's friends involved, like I understand that there's a level of coverage happening, but we're talking now about something way more significant, the longevity and future of the American nation. And this is where it's also sad to recognize that the media is so dishonest that they're offering coverage for China, that you have the NBA offering coverage for China, that Disney Plus is offering coverage for China. I do know that a lot of Americans, and this is probably where there's some positive in the midst of all of the challenges we're seeing with China, there is positive that a lot of Americans are waking up and recognizing that they've been lied to on a lot of levels and a lot of fronts. And this is where also we would say now's the time we got to start looking at that midterm election, because we need some different leaders in Congress and the Senate who are actually going to have the courage and backbone to stand up and say, no, we're not going to let China roll over America. We're not going to let this thing happen. We're not going to let America get weaker while China gets stronger, recognizing the existential threat that could be to America. So right now is the time to roll up our sleeves and start looking forward to the next election, knowing that this is an issue that we need to pay attention to in this next election.
Well, that's it for today, folks. We are out of time. We want to send you to our websites, wallbuilders.com and wallbuilderslive.com, where you can get more resources, more tools. Also, one more website, just to confuse you with a lot of websites, biblicalcitizens.com. Biblicalcitizens.com. That is the place to get the free course that you can host in your home, in your living room, right there. Bring people in and have good fellowship, or host it at your church. But what a great way to study the foundations that will make a nation free. We have a lot of great folks in the new series. It's got Kirk Cameron and Rabbi Daniel Lapin and Matt Staver and Ken Ivory and all kinds of folks. So be sure and check out biblicalcitizens.com and get your class started. Get people signed up. You can join us on Monday nights for our live national class, but we encourage you to host your own class and create that opportunity for fellowship that people are so hungry for right now. Biblicalcitizens.com. That's the website to find out more. Be sure to tune in the rest of the week here at WallBuilders Live. We've got a lot of great guests coming up this week, a lot of good information for you. And, of course, as always, on Friday, we'll have our Good News Friday. Thanks so much for listening today. You've been listening to WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided.